February 16th, 2023 at 5:30 on the dot. And today we have the Finance Committee, and I am Amy Fiden, joined with Andy Kopacki, Paul Benjamin, and David Phil. And so let's get right to business.
Absolutely.
I need to find, here's the agenda. I sent out minutes, not to the last meeting, but the meeting prior. Did anybody see them? Or maybe I'll just pass them along and we'll just move this to the next one if you didn't. No? Okay, let's skip that one. And we're just gonna, next meeting, I will try to just do like 3 of them. We'll put that on the next one and boom, boom, boom. Okay. I just have been trying to take some brief ones and we just have to get them approved. Just the votes and stuff. Okay. Also, I wanted to be right before we jumped in on the budgets. I wanted to go in and have a quick discussion on because going forward is on the 40B application that is going to the ZBA. I listened in on one of their meetings and they were talking about getting recommendations or and not necessarily finance, but I don't think finance can hurt. You know, they could talk about their conservation and some of the others, but I think it doesn't hurt to have recommendations from all the boards to show whether it's supported or not, this new project going forward. So the project that they're looking at, that's in question, and this is for the application on the 27th of February. That's for the Econo Lodge going in, and it is Valley CDC that is looking to put the affordable housing into the Econo Lodge. So anyways, we're here for some discussion. Does anybody want to start or have any input on this, or should I start?
What's our current level of the Chapter 40B? I believe the threshold is 10% for unfriendly.
My understanding was it was 12.5 at the last time it was certified, but then since then it has gone down. And the last number that I thought I saw from Jim Maximowski on the plan that he had done by the Pioneer Valley Commission there was, I think, 11.9. So we are over the 10% threshold. The last time I also saw that there was a, this has been talked about for years and years, and we were worried at one point about us losing the numbers soon, very soon. But the last presentation that I saw Bill Dwyer, I noticed he mentioned in 10 years is when the big numbers could drop and we can go under the 10 in 10 years. So also I've understood that there are other options that we could do to keep the affordable housing units are in discussion, but that's purely in discussion. We had Valley CDC come to the Housing and Economic Development Committee board prior to this project going in, before this was even a consideration. At that time, their suggestion was to focus on our existing housing, not necessarily open new housing. We didn't know about the Econo Lodge. It wasn't even an option at that point when we were interviewing them. We were talking at that point, we were saying, how about Russell School or some of the others? They were saying, no, your best bet is to focus on existing and keeping your existing housing and looking into options there. So my quick, and actually, when I was on the Economic and Development Committee, I did vote. We passed a vote in the very beginning when it first came out, and I did vote yes, that I did want, that I wanted to, I voted yes, that I thought it was good because I thought we were in bigger jeopardy. I really thought we had to have it or we were going to be forced into putting it somewhere we didn't want it. I didn't realize that we had other options and it wasn't as in jeopardy as I thought. So now that I don't think it's as in jeopardy as I thought, my thoughts have turned, and I rather see us keep our Route 9 as much retail, commercial, keeping the money we're in, coming in, keeping, whatever we have to keep the money flow coming in, and not be using it up on apartments. As it is, we don't do apartments, but you start opening it up and you give a waiver to one, others will be right behind asking for waivers. So those are a few of my thoughts. I'm here for anybody else who'd like to join in.
I just haven't gotten a good answer on how this will affect our tax revenue. You know, we had rooms tax there from the hotels. We were told they would be paying property taxes. They said it would, this is a year or two ago when they started talking about this, they said it would probably not be quite as much as the rooms tax that we were taking in. But then, you know, the story and the utilization has changed several times over the years. And my understanding is, you know, is it going to be educational? I was told it would be for job training and things like that. Educational places typically don't pay property taxes like the, you know, schools in the Chinese Valley or the Pioneer Valley Chinese Immersion School, things like that. So I'd like, from the finance perspective, to see how this is actually going to affect our revenues versus if there was another hotel or an office building there or whatever. Because I see a lot of added costs that may be associated with jamming a lot of people.
You have Dan on, and I think Dan can answer some of those questions.
Hey, Dan.
Hi, property tax wise, it's going to be a wash. The problem you have is the property, when it transferred to Valley CDC, it was restricted as to its use. It can never be used as a motel or a hotel or any kind of temporary lodging. So we're going to lose, by my estimate, we're going to lose about $10,000 a month in hotel motel revenue. So it's about 120 a year. Now, some of that will be made up because as the hotels in town have closed, the other hotels have raised their rates. So we haven't really seen a huge drop in hotel motel excise, but I think we will see a drop next year with that being closed.
That's interesting. So that's almost like a non-compete that the previous owner added to the sale so that the new owners couldn't compete with his current hotels, huh? That's interesting.
Yeah, it literally says he cannot use it as it cannot be used as a hotel or motel. And from what I understand, there were other people that wanted to buy it to use it as a hotel motel and pay more for it, and they said no.
Interesting.
So Dan, how long has the Econo Lodge been out of service?
They closed down the end of August, but UMass was in there from September through almost Christmas. They were using it as a dorm, and they made a $30,000 payment in lieu of hotel motel excise to the town. So that was basically revenue neutral at that point. But I think going forward, we're going to see a slight drop.
I did a records request for police, fire, and medical calls for most of the hotels in town, and so I'm working on it still. It's a lot of data for 3 years worth of calls, but just trying to compare the amount of action that we're getting from hotels like Howard Johnson, places like that had temporary homeless housing or COVID housing or things like that versus something like the Hampton Inn that didn't. And just trying to just get an idea of, are we going to be faced with, I mean, we've got ambulance issues, we've got shortage of police officers, we've got shortage of vehicles. I mean, what's the impact going to be financially to the call volume? So I'm just trying to compare that. I'm just going to basically make a list of calls by location and date, and leave it up to other people to interpret rather than just make a subjective opinion on it. So
I
Dan?
definitely see a need out there for this type of thing. I mean, there is an issue in the US, there's an issue in Massachusetts, but we have done our, quite a bit here. We've already done, our numbers, our levels of poverty are way low. Our numbers of the affordable housing are higher. I'm kind of curious on where all our neighboring towns are as far as their affordable housing ratios, if they're where they need to be, if they're up there too. I just don't, we're a small little town, and to take on other people's things, I think we need to hold off. I think it's important that we use this. We only have a small, Route 9 is all we got, and that's all we're going to use. And we need to keep it going to keep our taxes low for everybody else, to keep our schools going, to keep our police. So that's my opinion. Paul, did you have anything to add on this?
I guess I'd like to see what the costs are gonna be, but it sounds like to some degree the property's already been sold and has these deed restrictions on it, correct?
Yes, it sold in early January.
Right, so the question is, if they turn this down, what happens then? And what are the alternative uses for that site? What could it be turned into? As well, I mean, there's that to consider, especially when it already has a restriction put on it. So is that a deeded restriction, or is that a just a
Yeah.
to the person?
It's a restriction on the deed that the
Okay.
property can't be used as a hotel or a motel. I would think that if it doesn't get approved, they're probably going to sell it off and somebody else will buy it and use it for another purpose.
Okay.
So then the deed restriction would go away, correct?
No, it's permanent deed restriction.
Yeah, so
You can
it
never
has
put a
to be
hotel.
Hotel, right? Okay. I guess I'd like to see some more data on this and what's the alternative uses, as well as where we'd end up.
I'd also like to ask our attorneys, I think that doesn't sound right. How do you put a deed restriction on affordable housing that's not approved by the town as for that place to be affordable? How does that happen? I mean, it is a non-approved function, so how can they put something on there and do that? It doesn't seem right.
You're muted, David.
I say, I'm pretty sure you can put a deed restriction for the most part on any property. I don't know that it was put on the affordable housing. I think it just was on the property itself. And so that would apply, forever in the future, unfortunately. Carolyn,
Yeah, that happens when churches, I'm sorry, when churches sell, they frequently have restrictions on what can be used there. And some of it controversial for some people, and it has been, but that it's what's on the land at that point. It's there. I don't know if it ever sunsets, if there's like a 30-year or something, on things like that. I have no idea.
Carolyn, do we have any information on, I've heard various numbers of how many of our residents are considered senior citizens and how many of our residents are considered in poverty or homeless?
Yeah, I can get a breakdown of the census who's elderly. As far as the medium income, Annie did share some information a couple weeks ago. It was actually Jim did, Maskanowski. He shared some data that Annie also had been using regarding Hadley's higher than expected. It's about
Yes.
87%. Is that right, Amy? 87%?
That's correct. He said Hadley is 87%, or no, $87,000.
I'm sorry. Yeah, $87,000 is the medium income.
Whereas the state is 84 and the county is 73. So we are higher than all those. So the other thing that he said, that the poverty level in the state is 9.3. In the county, the poverty level is 17.9, but Hadley's poverty level is 6.7. So it is extremely low compared to all around. He also mentioned that I think in here he had let me look. I'm pretty sure that he told me that what is it, elderly is 19% versus 16%, I think it is, from other areas. So we are high on the elderly. So that's where we need to focus, because that's where we're really high, is the elderly. Now, not necessarily is the elderly they might need housing, but they might not meet the income limits if they sell their house or their assets and they've lived there all their lives. So is there a need for housing? Maybe down the road. And if we were to, make waivers or do something like that, maybe they need some type of assisted living, something that they can pay for, something that if their money runs out, insurance covers, something like Arbors. That would make sense, because we have a high elderly here.
Do we know if that's a suitable use for that property?
Do not know. So, does anybody want to make a motion that we can either send something to ZBA, just that we don't need to have a lengthy, it's really not up to us. It's totally ZBA's call, but we should have some type of, just want to throw something out there with what our recommendation is. So if anybody has a motion that they want to.
Me, from the financial perspective, there seems to be a lot of unanswered questions about the cost versus the benefit to the town, and revenue from this facility versus revenue from another sort of use, what the impact's going to be on police, fire, and medical resources, manpower, equipment, etc. And then, like you just mentioned, we have a heck of a lot more elderly than we have homeless, it sounds like. So why are we not benefiting more people for that cost versus fewer people? And it seems like with only 6% of the, what was it, 6% in poverty? Is that what the number was?
It said 6.7.
Okay. So it seems like those that would be moving in would not necessarily even be Hadley residents. So we'd be bringing in people from surrounding areas to live there. So.
Oh, I have, and now that I look at it, population over 65 in Hadley is 19.5%. In the state, it's 17, and in the county, it's 17. So population over 65%, over 65 is 19.5%.
Okay, so we're a couple points higher than everywhere else.
Yeah.
David, was that a motion?
I mean, it could be. I guess I don't really know what's the right way to ask or voice the concerns without trying to tell the ZBA, what to do. Or, I mean, it's completely their decision. We really have no say in it. So I guess, Carolyn, what was
You actually don't have to vote on this right now unless you have a deadline and you had a specific request to support it or not support it. But if you need to gather more information before you bring it to a vote, you can table. It's not even really tabling the discussion. It's just you're seeking more information.
Well, I believe that they're looking to do their application goes in, and I believe it's on the 27th in which they need something. And I don't think it's any different than when we recommend anything else. We're not making the decisions, just like when we go to the warrant, we put our recommendations all the time on the warrant. Like even CPA money, we're putting our recommendations on the warrant, whether or not it passes or we don't make those decisions. It's just our recommendation.
Oh,
Oh, I see you there thinking.
I am, I'm trying to come up with it. I mean, basically, I think the, at most, that I'd be comfortable with is just, saying that we believe that there's a fair amount, there's enough. There are some questions that need to be answered, that this should be thoroughly studied, to look at the implications for lost revenue, which is gonna be a potential of lost revenue, due to the loss of the taxes. We're gonna lose them anyway, based on the fact that it's already a done deal, okay? But that, in consideration with that, we are also concerned about any, some at least study of impact study of what the, and not necessarily impact study in the official way that impact studies are done, like for, like a new mall going in or something. But that they do some investigation and estimates to the town about the added costs that may come with this type of, project, versus other uses on the property. Also, the fact that, does it meet the higher, do we have a higher priority group? If we have more seniors that may need affordable housing, do we have a higher priority to serve there? Versus the fact that we have a low, poverty and or homeless rate in our town. And that's the questions I just think need to be considered. And that doesn't mean that one should outweigh the other, but I think it all should be part of the discussion. And so is there a way for us to just word it? David, I hate to throw this on you, but you've been in this longer than I have, as to how to frame this. That to ask them to just take all those into consideration when making their decision.
Well, how about this? I'll second those concerns to be presented to the ZBA.
Okay, right. All right.
I will, Amy or Carolyn or somebody that has the, can go back and review this, or I can do it. I can kind of write up something and I'll send it around for everyone to
Okay.
take a look at. Probably be easier than trying to word it now.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be a mess if I try to.
And just checking the calendar briefly, next week we have the meeting with the select board on Wednesday, and then it's the 27th is our and a meeting that I have. That the meeting is for the ZBAs on the 27th. I actually have a conflict. I have a CPA meeting that night, so I'm looking at, we don't have a lot of opportunity between now and the ZBA meeting to vote on this.
Yes. Paul made a motion, seconded. Do we just want to?
Okay, any other discussion then? So we're recommending, what are we, so
No,
we're
we're not
recommending
necessarily recommending, we're requesting that
just
they can.
placing concerns. We're just,
We're just saying that there's a number of things that should be looked at, including what I said. I hope that's been taken. It's recorded.
so we're just saying, are we all in agreement upon the concerns that Paul mentioned?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll try to write them up in a logical fashion to send to ZBA. The only other thing that I thought of is, our chiefs do a great job with working with what they have. And so when you bring something like this to them, they kind of shrug their shoulders and say, no problem, we got it. We can handle it.
Okay.
But then 6 months or a year down the line, we have manpower issues and equipment issues. So I think that really needs to be looked at in a tough way. And answers may not be popular one way or another, but we need to know what the financial impact is going to be to police, fire, and our ambulance.
I agree. And I think we all have, a heart here, and we all want to see people and help people, in all different ways. You know, nobody wants to, everybody deserves a place to go. Everybody deserves a place to live. Everybody, there's a lot out there. Nobody wants to be the bad guy, right? There's absolutely not. And so we want to help too, but you know, are we pulling people in? The question is, are we pulling people in? Our Hadley people? Are we helping our Hadley people? Or are we helping other people outside? You know, with our resources. That's the thing.
Are there any, pardon my ignorance here, but are there any state or federal monies that come in as a result of supporting these types of programs? Population?
Understanding is there's plenty of state and federal money for Valley CDC to do this.
But not for the town.
They to start the project from the residents who, you know, whatever they charge, who knows what else, and we are unfortunately footing the bill.
Okay. All right. So I believe we're all in favor of this. So I think we'll just move on at this point.
Vote, or are we just putting it out there as an informal?
Yeah, informal.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right, so the next thing on it is I am just looking to see who I have here. I guess we can just go down the list. But I believe we are going to skip Council on Aging for budget discussions because they will go to another night, correct, Linda? Is that what I heard?
Yes, Carolyn spoke with Haley.
Okay, so should we can go down the list and go to Board of Health?
Sure.
Is someone here from Board of Health?
Yeah, I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay. All right, we will skip Board of Health.
Do you want to, is it worth reviewing? I know Ben knew we were going to be meeting tonight. I can explain what some of the budget line items, if that would help, or do you want to wait and have Ben
Well,
here?
Well, why don't we just push it off for now and then and just add it to the end, and if he wants to do, I mean, we can look at these after, but if they want an opportunity to present or speak or go for something, I'd like to have them have the opportunity.
Okay.
I don't necessarily.
I'm going to text him too, because maybe there might have been confusion among the board members or Ben who's coming. I'm wondering, because I mean, I just left him about 3 hours ago. So I'm just going to text him, but if you want to move on to another department.
Okay, next is Historical Commission.
They are not going to be coming. There was a conflict. Let me open up their budget. I said that we could handle that.
So they don't plan on coming at all.
They're not going to come. No, they're fine. This is a, I think, let me get to. The 500s. Okay. So I did want to just, you know, as we start to say, this is, you're getting in a little bit different format than last year. This is actually part of the budget book. Last year, I was showing Excel spreadsheets and we had yet to assemble the book. This year, I started working with them and putting the budgets into the book so that you would have, when you're reviewing them ahead of time, you would have the language, the introductory information that we are presenting with the budget. And I also added into the explanations a little bit, I tried each time to address if there was something different about the 24 budget, to add a sentence or two about that. Not to take the place of the departments presenting to you, but this is what's going to be part of the presentation this week. So let's see, I mean, next week. So let's see how that works for you. I think once it's on the screen, it's the same either way, but now do you have the Board of Health? No, we're not.
We're looking at
I'm sorry.
Historical.
Oh, and they're in the,
We were showing the Board of Health, but now we're on Council on Aging.
Right. Okay, let me just go. Yeah, right. Okay, so we're actually supposed to be going to Historical Commission, which is page 47. Okay, here we are. Okay, so it's been interesting in Historical Commission. As you look back over the years, we had a group that was not really spending money. I don't know how their other activities were run or what they were doing, but we have a lot, there's been a lot of change in that commission in the last couple of years, and it has most certainly become more active. You're going to see requests from them going to CPA and various other, they have a lot of projects all lined up and in mind. So they were a little disappointed to see, hey, they had such a small budget. They've had the $300 for many years, and the expenditures, they did squeak in and spend a $300 at the end of last year on some programming information that they needed. So this year, 23, we have again the $300 budget. As usual, they haven't spent anything yet, but they are planning on it. But they did put in a request to double their budget to $600. What's happening is they want to print materials, they want to get supplies. They've got a lot of activities, and they like to have some money in there that they can work with. And that is an amount that Carolyn approved.
I don't have any questions. Does anyone else? No?
All right.
Okay, let's move on to Park and Rec.
Hi, guys.
They are the one right above that. Okay, we have Greg on. Okay.
Hi, Greg.
Hello. Not a whole bunch of changes. Our bottom line remains the same. The school use custodian fees and the school use expenses and custodial fees, those are combined. And we actually took some off of that because I haven't been spending the amount that I had in that, and added a little bit to the equipment budget. So like I said, basically all the lines are the same except changing that money from one line to another, but the bottom line remains the same.
Okay,
Right, and that was before, he's saying, that's before the application of the COLA in Carolyn's town administrative line column. But yes, and I think it's worth saying too, Greg, that having a budget that stays the same year to year doesn't reflect the activity level of what's going on, because much of your programming, it takes in fees and you spend those fees on the programming. So you actually have a lot more money coming through and meeting a higher level of activity than is shown in the budget.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And we've had some programs like pickleball we brought in a lot more in pickleball and what that's cost and equipment so far. So that's been able to help out with funding some of those other programs and some of the free services we provide.
With these additional programs, are there impacts on the school? I see you combine, as you said, you combine custodial and school use expenses, but that number is less. Do you see, is that a reflection of less use of the school or just more covering? I'm assuming we're not covering the expense out of your revolving fund, are you?
No, we're using that out of that fund. It just hasn't been that much. We haven't had to pay for, when they have people on duty, we don't pay any additional fees. So a lot of the times we're using the schools, there's no charge for that use.
That's up till 8:30?
Yes, sir.
I have a few questions, and it's or just a question on the revolving account, not this particular. How is that working? Is that working well, the revolving account?
Yeah, it is. It's really such a benefit to have that. well, I think I've kept the total in there pretty steady since I got started. But, you know, we have had a lot more money going through that account. All the player fees, you know, fees for like the ski program, registration for pickleball and adult basketball, all those things go into that revolving account. And, you know, most of the things we buy, like uniforms for, you know, the basketball teams and the coaches' jerseys, things like that, come out of that account. So we've done a pretty good job, I think, of maintaining balance in those things and keeping a pretty steady balance in that account.
What is the average balance? I know it's a,
We keep around 20,000 in there. You know,
And
and
what's-
that's,
what's the
go ahead.
cap?
I don't recall. I believe it's quite a bit higher than that. That's about what it was when I got started, and it's kind of stayed around there.
Do you know, Linda, what the cap is?
Not on that. I don't know what, by each one, what their specific
Oh, okay.
cap is. The cap is usually on spending, and I think Park and Rec is one of the,
It's different.
yes, it's much more liberally addressed because they have to run so much through that account.
It doesn't have to be zeroed out or get close
Right.
to the balance on July 1st. It's the one revolving account that can be carried over, because many of their expenses come in later than when they're charging. So there is the one one revolving account in town government that can carry over large balances.
Okay. Great. Does anyone else have any questions for Greg?
I'm good.
Great. Well, thank you, Greg. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Do a
keep up
fabulous
the,
job.
keep up the good work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, moving right along, library. I think we have Patrick here.
Dan has a question too.
Park and Rec revolving fund is 50,000, the limit.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Tim.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. So I'm not sure how you want me to do this. I think I'll just go through, I'm going to go through the lines in reverse order here because I think the main topic of conversation is around staffing and why we're making the request that we're making. Because it is a slightly larger request than we would have traditionally made. So if starting at the bottom here, dues, memberships, that is a cost for it's an assessment from our consortium CW Mars for membership services for all of the electronic, the network that we use to loan out items, the network of internet infrastructure that we use here at the library for staff use and also for the public. So that is a fixed cost. It's just one invoice that we pay at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then that is zeroed out. Next line, educational supplies and books is pretty much what it says on the can. It's our budget for books, materials that we loan out, all kinds of media, some other types of collections and resources, but it's pretty much anything that the public can borrow from the library. And that number, we have a target in mind when we put that number forward, because the Board of Library Commissioners who certify public libraries, they want to see the collections of the library invested in, and as a percentage of the total library budget, they're looking for us to be spending somewhere around 18% of our total budget on new materials, so that the collection doesn't stagnate and become irrelevant to the community. Office supplies, pretty basic, programs and activities, We're asking for $400 for that. I should point out that we've gone in the last few years from a high of, actually, I don't remember the number, but I know it was more than $3,000 for library programming. We've sort of turned that over to the Friends of the Library, which is a very, that's sort of their core mission, really, to support library programming and both to create it and also to help support financially the programming that staff come up with for all different age groups. So we do keep a small amount of money in that budget for things that, you know, when we need supplies for a children's program or something like that, rather than going to a friend's meeting and requesting that money, we just go out and buy the googly eyes that we need or whatever for the preschoolers. Above that, we have tuition and meetings that, you know, since the pandemic, most of the meetings have gone online. So there really isn't a lot of, you know, driving around. That used to really cover gas if we had to go to a, you know, a conference or something. But that really doesn't happen that much anymore. Computer resource services, we've asked for a little bit more on that line because we have turned over the maintenance of our computers to, or the maintenance of our public computers to CW Mars under contract, because we were working with someone, an independent contractor on that. He's moved out of the area, and we were having a lot of problems day to day that that really would be better served and more quickly resolved if we just had CW Mars taking care of those computers, and that's a service that they offer. So that's what that covers. And then part-time library salaries. This is really where we're seeing the largest increase, and really the reason for that is that since we've moved into the new library, we are seeing sort of explosive growth while really kind of having the same staff that we more or less have always had. And so we're looking to do two things with this increase. One is to add a 5.5 hour a week position to have a staff person that comes in on Saturdays to do library circulation, so to work at the circulation desk and help people when they come in to do you know, typical borrowing and that kind of thing, so that we can have two people here. The other increase here is for us to add 5 weekly hours to the schedule of the assistant director, who is currently at 27 hours. So we push that to 32. And that would allow us to keep her here until the end of the day, because at this point she's leaving mid-afternoon. That's traditionally how her schedule ran. And now she's able to take the additional hours, and we'd really like to have her till the end of the day when it can be quite busy in here. So that's really what we're asking for. The part-time staff, just to put it in context, we have currently 2.5 full-time equivalents as far from part-time staff. That doesn't include myself, so that would be 3.5 with myself. But this increase would push it up to 2.75 full-time equivalents in part-time staff. I should also add, just as points of information, just so that you understand, you know, the resources that we're also drawing on to maintain our operations. We use 200 in fiscal year 22. We use 290 hours of community volunteer labor. In FY23, that will likely be significantly higher than that. In 2022, we had 1 senior tax write-off volunteer. In 23, we have 2 that are working for us doing useful tasks. And we're getting a lot of value out of that. It's a really great program, and I'm grateful to the Council on Aging for sending us that additional help. Just quickly, I want to run down kind of like the scale of the increase in usage that we're seeing in the library since we've reopened to the public. And so for comparison, I really, because of the pandemic and because we were under construction, the last really comparable year that I can look at to see this change is FY19, before we really went into active construction and before the pandemic. And so in that fiscal year, we had 19,643 visitors to the library. And in FY22, after we reopened and relaxed the restrictions from COVID, we had 24,025. So that's a 22% increase from one year to the other. So, and all of those, you know, we have people that come in and some of them we don't interact with at all, and some need very full, you know, full service. So it really depends on the individual, but some of that can be very time consuming. Calendar year 22, we loaned 56,000 physical items versus, again, calendar year 2019 when we loaned 42,415. That's a 33% increase. And every one of those loaned items involves multiple layers of work for staff, including the staff patron interaction of checking the item out, materials handling and routing, reshelving, communication. You know, a lot of those come as interlibrary loan from other institutions, so we have to communicate, put in requests. Sometimes those can actually be more complicated than you would think. Record keeping, patron follow-ups, and very, you know, fairly routine home deliveries of items. That's generally done by volunteers, but sometimes it falls to staff if we can't wrestle someone up to bring something to someone who is homebound. So that is something that we offer. And in addition to that, the new library, in that it includes spaces that we've never had before in the old library, such as the conference rooms. You know, we have a whole new layer of kind of facilities management that we do in terms of booking rooms and all of the, you know, kind of follow-up questions and help that entails with AV assistance and that sort of thing. So that's really what's behind that. I can go into more detail. I'll spare you. I mean, I'd like to answer any questions that you have, but I don't want to take all the air out of the room. But it's just suffice to say, it is extremely busy at the library 6 days a week that we're here. And this is really kind of the very least of what we need to keep up, because otherwise we're just falling behind on other things because people are just walking in every minute. So is there anything I can answer for you about this budget?
I have a question on the salaries. Can you tell me what I believe there's COLA in there for the salaries. So I'm wondering what the difference is on the new hours.
Well, so I guess I'm not sure if I understand your question, but as far as the request that I put in, you know, we were asking for an additional, I think it was $11,000, and it went up to $12,000 with the COLA. But the two hourly positions, that if this helps you for a frame of reference, the 5.5 hour Saturday help that we're looking for is a $15.63 an hour position, and the assistant director's position, she's paid $21.87. She's been here for a number of years now, more than 10. So that reflects more than anything the longevity of her position, more than that. I mean, honestly, she's not being paid what she should be paid for what she does, and but that's essentially what that reflects.
So if I have to see this right on here, and maybe that's Linda, you can tell me this. So the 70,804, that's what Patrick said, that's what he wanted. That's with the new people, and it's
sorry, that's my salary. That's the director's salary in the top line. Second line is for the part-time staff.
okay.
Yeah.
And so the difference there, so that 4,000, that's just COLA, correct?
Right. Patrick's
No.
request is.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, Linda. I do have a contract, and that contract was, you know, agreed upon at the conclusion of at the beginning of the year. That was done in advance of submitting this budget. So that was the trustee decision. And then, as you can see, on top of that, the town administrator's recommendation to add the COLA, which would apply to my contract. It's in the contract that if there's a COLA granted, that I get that.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And so the difference on the part-time, and that's where you were talking about the hours.
Yes.
So that difference between the 107 and the 109. So you said the 107, and then Carolyn put the 109 in because of the COLA.
Correct. That's what that reflects. Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood where the numbers were coming from.
Right,
Thank
and that will be true of all the budgets, so that we asked their requests not to have any increases for COLA. That we would then took care of that at the end
Okay,
and added them into the town administrator's column, and that'll be true across the board.
okay.
Except for when we get into collective bargaining.
Yes, that was related to non-union, yes, non-union gets the 2.5%. Union has their own arrangement, which happens to be a lot of it is 2.5%. And also some contracts, not all contracts are equal, but they don't all apply the same, but most are like Patrick's, that they will allow for the COLA increase as well.
Quick question regarding the second part-time position that was increasing to 32 hours. I think you said you were bumping it up 7.
Up
Five.
5 hours from 27 to 32.
Okay, does that change their benefit status from a part-time to a full-time employee?
No.
It's already a benefited position.
Okay.
I guess it changes the formula for however it's prorated.
I don't have any other questions. Anyone else? He answered all my questions before, so I didn't really have any because when he went down the budget, he answered them. So that was good.
I aim to please.
Okay, well, thank you, Patrick. Seeing this year after year, you know, we're ready. You know, we understand where you're coming from on these now.
That's wonderful. I thank you very much for having me, and I'd like to see you all come into the library and see what's going on here, because it is pretty wonderful.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, take care. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye. All right, Veteran Services.
Now, were you in touch with Steve Connor today?
No,
Amy?
no. But then again, I was straight out at work, so I didn't really have much.
Okay, he was asking about what the timing of it and whether he should drive home first or not, and I tried to put him in touch with you as to where that would be.
That was probably my fault, but I just have been straight out, like, haven't got to all my emails.
Carolyn was
I mean,
suggesting that she could handle it. I don't know if there was something he wanted to say.
I mean, whoops, let's see. If you had any questions about the role of veteran service officers, as far as any of the detailed changes, I'm just trying to look and see. Can you?
Oh,
is
I'm
the
sorry.
veterans- Yeah.
Yeah. Asleep at the wheel here. Let's see. Let's see which one they are.
No, I had it right in front of me. Sorry.
Page 45.
It's,
Yeah, I'm. Oh, it's the, yeah, 45.
it actually, it looks like it went down.
It did, but I guess maybe we could talk to him too at some point. If the actuals on some of these is like, let's look at burial, 0, 1,000, and then we haven't done anything this year. Are they going to continue to need 4,000? I mean,
I guess.
and I'm surprised that they didn't spend the Memorial Day expenses, because we did do that, didn't we? We had the parade.
Yeah, I can't answer that.
So it's nothing huge. I mean, it's gone down, so it's not anything huge, but
Yeah.
it would be interesting to see. I mean, that would be my question to him is, you know, what is that? Where does he come up with that number for the 4,000, considering that, looking at what he's done? And then my question of the Memorial Day, I would expect him to have spent it.
Oh, here he is.
Here
Oh,
we go.
okay. I was just texting him, so. Nice try, Steve.
Perfect.
You're muted. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It took me a little while to get on. I apologize, and then find the
Oh, you're all
meeting.
good. Thank you very much.
So what's the question that people had?
So my question is, if you, I'm looking just at your line items for burial expenses, and in 21, you didn't do any, 22, you had 1,000, and then this year you haven't had any yet. Where do you come up with the 4,000? I'm just curious.
So what the law changed a few years ago, it used to be that we could provide up to $2,000 on for a burial of an indigent veteran or their surviving spouse, if the funeral was less than 3,000. Well, they changed it, so now we can reimburse up to 4,000.
Okay,
So every single community, we put at least one burial there to be budgeted, because if you don't, then we have to go through all this stuff to get that money when we're obliged to pay it. And so there's oftentimes no veteran is needed. The money's not needed for anybody. But we, as a security, always put it in every single town. The city of Northampton and Amherst, they are much bigger. So we always have at least one, sometimes two. So we always budget them higher. But every other town, we say, make sure you budget, because if it happens, we have to allocate the money, and it just saves the going back and going to a special town meeting or whatever to get the money. So we just ask for it to be upfront.
So
Right,
Steve,
and
say
if it's not used, Amy, it rolls back in. They
sure,
don't use
did
it for anything else.
you just say that it's only, I mean, we have a lot of veterans in town, but that's if they don't have money themselves?
Right. If they don't have money, life insurance or whatever to take care of the burial, then we're the ones responsible for doing it.
Okay,
So,
Fair
and
enough.
it could be as simple as you have it's only happened a few times in all the years I've been, but so you have a homeless veteran who basically dies in your community, there is no responsibility. So it's the town that veteran died in would then be responsible for it. And it's reimbursable at the 75% like everything else.
Mhm.
But we need to have that done. So I think the reason why it says the actual $1,000 was we didn't spend 1,000. It was probably the 4, but you got 75% back. That's possible. I don't know that for sure, but I've seen that happen.
I actually wonder if it should have, if it was put on the wrong line item, maybe those were the Memorial Day expenses.
Yeah, it could be.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so in the Memorial Day expenses, the one thing that I would imagine is for us is I'm not really sure where that money comes from or where that money goes. I'm sorry, because we don't ever ask for anything for Memorial Day. It's all run by the Legion and other people. So,
Oh, then that's from them, because I think we tried to use it for other purposes last year, Carolyn, and weren't we told, no, that's the Legion uses that money?
Possibly, I don't remember.
I
Yeah.
remember that's exactly what they said. It's for the hot dogs and for all their expenses, and they do put on quite a bit for the parade. I'm just wondering why it wasn't spent. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, but I looking at it now, I think it probably was just charged to the wrong line.
Hmm.
but even so, that would have been 22.
22, and then we haven't had,
Okay, and we haven't had 23 yet. So
Right. Yeah. I bet that's it.
Okay.
right, that's correct. We haven't had it. Yeah, so the one expense that we ask for on Memorial Day is the money to buy the flags, but that's incorporated in everybody's assessment. So you wouldn't see it as a line item. It's in your assessment already, because I buy all the flags from one person and get a great price on it. So we save money that way. So that's put in the assessment. And what the assessment basically states is we're putting in there 25% of the cost of the flags, because it all comes reimbursed. So it all goes out in one bill and it comes back. Does that make sense?
Does that include, Steve, all the ones that they hang up in town?
No. That's through probably your highway department.
Okay. All right, well,
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have questions?
Good presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
All right, very good. Sorry I was late, but thanks for
fine.
letting me come in.
Perfect timing.
It's perfect.
All right,
Thanks.
bye-bye.
Bye. All right, so, all right, that is everything that's on the agenda, but I do see a few more things here. The Oliver Will, which is just the $100, which we can just keep going right along, I'm guessing.
Right. Right.
All right. What else did you send us, Linda? We have. I think
Did,
that's everything.
yeah, unless Board of Health he hasn't shown up.
Yeah, he hasn't answered, so.
Okay.
Well, just give them an opportunity when, when Haley comes.
Right, we have to schedule her too, so reschedule. All right.
All right, so I don't have anything else for tonight. That's the agenda. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Motion to adjourn.
That's Paul's favorite thing.
It is.
Either that or the cat's gonna pull the plug anyways.
Yeah, that's right.
He's got that ready at a moment's notice.
That's right.
Second that.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Good night.
night.
Hit the red button. Good night.